everybody. It's Wednesday, February 24th, and that means it's time for a special episode of Chatting with Agnes and Cecilia. I'm Cecilia Supp. I'm a certified association executive, and I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulip's nonprofit consulting and association management services. My co-host and friend, Agnes Amos Coleman, who's a certified meeting planner, can't be with us today as she has a schedule conflict. So on behalf of Agnes, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our global audience, and thanks to all of our audience for joining us. Today we're doing a special episode because it's the end of February and all of the CAE exam letters have been sent out and most of them have been received at this point. There are some people who do not pass the exam the first time they take it, and there are more people like that than you might think. And so I'm very pleased to introduce my guest, Nikole Roulhac, who is one of those people who has taken the exam more than once. And Nikole's here to share some of her insights and moral support for everyone else. Welcome, Nikole. Thanks for joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much, Cecilia, for the opportunity to share my story with your audience. My name is Nikole. Right now, I am the Member Services Manager for AAMFT. That's the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy. I've been there 7 years. And I'm just excited for the opportunity to talk to everybody.
Well, this is great. And Nikole, I'm so glad you brought this forward in our conversation last week, because I think it's important too, because there are other people out there who do take the exam more than once. I know a lot of people have taken it more than once. And you have had this experience. I have not. I am a person who passed the exam the first time I took it. So let's talk a little bit about what do you feel like when you take the exam and then you get that letter and it's not the letter you want it to get?
So what I would want everybody to know that has taken the exam more than one time is you are not alone. Believe it or not, there are strength in numbers. And while that initial shock is, a blow to your professional career, what it might seem, I want everybody to know that you have to get back up and you have to do it again. Initially, I was very discouraged about taking the exam more than once, and then having failed it a second time, I had already made up in my mind that I wasn't going to take it again, especially failing it with being so close within the passing score. But you know what? I said, someone else is going to hear my story, hear my journey, and they will be touched by it. So if even one person is encouraged on taking the exam again, that would be perfect and wonderful.
Well, I'm glad you used the word journey. I use that phrase a lot, the CAE Journey. As you know, and as many other people may know, I've been a CAE mentor for 6 years now, to both individuals and groups. And it is a journey because a journey is not always a straight line from point A to point B. And there's so many things that go into what affects your performance on the exam. And I know we all like to use the word fail. I use that word. I'm hard on myself too, like a lot of us are. But is it so much a failure, or is it a level of performance that you want to improve? And that's another way to look at it. Because, for example, you may have some comments on, were there any distractions when you were taking the exam? Were there some things that maybe kind of got in the way of your concentration?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. You have to look at your exam experience and your journey up to taking the exam really holistically. For me, my second time around was very unique, having to study for the exam and work exclusively from home. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times that work-life balance really blended in. So I think going forward, my next time around is really drawing that line to where this is work, this is home, and this is my study time. Just clearly delineating that time for me, I think will make a definite, change in me taking the exam the second time around. And now I kind of know what to expect.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, and I think that's a great thing too. Other mentors I've spoken to, like Cheryl Ronk, have mentioned that too. It's like, look at it as a test run. If you take the exam and you don't hit that required score for that cohort, because every cohort who takes the exam may have a different passing score. It depends on what questions are on the exam and how many people take the exam. And and how many questions might be disqualified. I think we all know enough about the CAE process now, and it's despite the excruciating wait after the exam that can go on for 2 months or more. A lot of that is because after the exam's administered, ASAE and the CAE Commission make sure all the exams are really thoroughly reviewed. And so they take a lot of time to make sure that is a good process. So we talked a little bit about your experience and your journey. What are some positive things you're doing right now to help yourself and others who are still on this journey?
One of the things that, I've really started to refocus on is making, those connections with people that, have passed and haven't passed. Just really maintaining the open lines of communication and really trying to understand other people's journeys with the process. I mean, learning what their study habits were, learning what potential distractions, were involved when they probably took the test. I mean, speaking with a close friend of mine, she even said, I actually got a desk and a chair because she works specifically home now, whereas the first time she took the test, she was doing it at her kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
So just even making those minor changes can make all the difference in the examination environment, which would allow you to focus and feel like you're actually in an environment where you're actually taking a test.
Mm-hmm. So making sure that you control your environment as much as possible if you are taking the online exam, because I have heard that the requirements for the home version of the online exam are a little stricter in some ways. The breaks are very strict. You only get the break in between the first and the second half of the exam, which might be a little different than an on-site testing facility. They might let you take that bathroom break more than once, but your time's going to keep running. I know that's what happened when I took it. So those are all really great tips. And you've taken another action that I think is great, is you have not only spoken out about this and shared this with people and Collaborate, you created a new Collaborate group. So let's talk about that a little bit. What's your group called and what is its goal?
Yes, so I created a group on Collaborate called So I Failed, What Next? And that was the immediate question that I asked myself when I failed the CAE exam both times. The first time around, I knew I was going to pass. I knew I was going to take the exam again. But the second time around, I was like, what do I do now? I am very successful at the association. I'm getting personal growth, but this has always been a goal of mine from starting in the association world. So really, this group is giving an outlet for people who may not know what they want to do. They may be successful at their associations and feel like maybe they don't really want to pursue the journey again, but I want to offer a sense of hope and encouragement that the number of times you fail does not define you as an association professional. It's how you bounce back and rebound.
Exactly. You have to get back up.
Exactly.
It's like a friend of mine said one time, you can stop in the land of despair, just don't unpack your bags and live there. You got to move on. So I think that's great. And it does take us time to get past this. I was talking to somebody the other day who wasn't successful with the exam, and they said, well, I gave myself 2 days to feel bad for myself and eat whatever I wanted, and then I got right back to studying. And I think that's another great word for that. Just like give yourself that space. It's a huge disappointment after the amount of work that happens to get to the exam. And anyone who has the CAE knows that work and that experience and that sense of flooding relief and excitement if your letter starts with congratulations, and that sense of disappointment if it doesn't. So I think if we all just acknowledge that for ourselves and try to help and support each other. I love that you're saying, let's have hope, let's have moral support. Let's do it until we get it right and until we pass. So, and like we like to say when we're studying, it's not always the right answer, it's the best answer. So find your best answer to keep going with your CAE studies. So what are some of the things you hope people talk about in your group? So I failed, now what?
So one of the things that, I hope people, who join the group can really start to talk about is, what their true authentic feelings were at that time, because for me, I didn't give myself the opportunity to really feel and to really feel how disappointed that I was. And it didn't dawn on me how disappointed I was that I didn't achieve a passing score the first time wasn't until I sat down for the second time around. And I look back and I'm like, wow, I've really committed to a study plan. I've been on it. I'm holding myself accountable. So just really being able to offer that additional support for others in the same position and allowing yourself to feel those feelings, but again, not staying there and then getting back up and moving on to the next step. I also like for people who have failed it more than once or maybe once and passed it a second time to offer tips and resources on maybe their study habits or, what they did leading up to the exam. A couple of people that I know took the exam would stay in a hotel, so they have that time away to really collect their thoughts and be in a mental space to prepare for the exam. That's a little harder now due to COVID, but just really, honing into, what you're about to embark on, and whatever way it goes, you still put in a lot of work and effort, and you should still be proud about that.
Exactly. I'm so glad you said that, because you did the work, and if you pass the exam or not, when you take it, you've done the work and you're coming out smarter than when you went in. And I think if we kind of look at that, I know a lot of us, I'm included in this sometimes, even though I'm considered a half glass full person, I kind of look at the negative and don't focus on the positive. And so I'm trying to bring that back to the forefront after 2020, which everybody is just kind of like, what the heck just happened there? And that, I think the events of 2020 also impacted our CAE work and journeys for a lot of people. So you've mentioned looking at what you're doing. Where's your space? Where are you putting your mind? Are you separating study time from work time, from personal enjoyment time? A lot of that relates to self-assessment. So what are a few questions you've maybe asked yourself in that self-assessment that might be helpful to others?
So one of the things that I ask myself is, how do I best learn? Like, what is really my learning style? Because when it comes to actually working at my association, certain things I learn hands-on. But when it came to studying for the CAE, I learned that reading the material first and then going back for understanding really worked for me. Whereas I was just reading just to read, just to say I read the chapter, and not really reading for a comprehension and understanding. So that's one of the things that I really asked myself. What are your learning styles? How do you learn to study for a certification exam? Because it won't always be the same, whereas if you're learning to drive, a manual transmission, or, studying for any other type of, test. So identifying your learning style and then really dedicating separate time for you to study. That's the biggest thing that I did in my self-assessment.
Mm-hmm. So we only have a few minutes left in this episode. So when you do pass the CAE exam, how are you going to celebrate?
I'm probably going to scream because it'll just be a sense of not only relief, but just, wow, I have really come a long way and I did it. I finally did it. I'm probably going to celebrate for a couple of days. And it's going to give me such joy to change my email signature in Outlook to have CAE next to it.
It is a good feeling and well earned, and in your case, well deserved. You obviously are a person who embodies what we would like to see in association and nonprofit executives, in that you are committed to improvement, you're committed to learning, you're committed to our profession and to helping others. So I want to thank you for joining us today to talk about this and to support others in your situation. And before we close out, what's the one thought you would like the audience to take away today about personal and professional development?
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to, be on this episode. One of the things that I would probably, tell the audience is, don't ever give up. You know, the learning is in the doing. So as long as you keep learning, you're always going to keep doing. So I'm always open for growth. And, you know, I try to read a book at least once a month, you know, whether it's, you know, fictional, nonfictional, or what have you. But just be committed and open to always learning.
Well, Nikole, if someone wanted to connect with you and work together to support each other on the CAE journey, what's the best way they can get in touch with you?
Well, the best way that you can get in touch with me is, of course, on Collaborate, Nikole with a K, Roulhac. You can also reach me on Facebook, my first and last name. And yeah, I'm always open to making connections.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you again, Nikole, for being so brave to talk about your experience and letting others know it's okay to talk about it and they're not alone. So thank you for doing that. And I look forward to continuing to know you and support you in your journey. And then I hope that you will continue to support people once you get your CAE. So thanks
Thank
again.
you so much for having me.
You are welcome. Thanks for joining us. And on behalf of Rogue Tulips Nonprofit Consulting, thanks for watching this special episode. If you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips, you can check us out on the web, roguetulips.com. We are also supporters of the 501c League, which is a virtual membership organization for everyone in the nonprofit community and the people who love them. Check out the League at the 501cleague.net. And the League has a variety of CAE resources for people in our profession, and those resources are beginning to grow, so check it out. Thanks again, Nikole, and thanks to our audience for joining us, and we'll see you next time with another episode.
Okay, can you